everybody. Thank you for joining us today in our webinar. My name is Jennifer. Here with me is Horst. Horst, please say hello.
Hello, everybody.
Hi, we both work in the scientific department at Thematics, and we'll talk about case studies in neurofeedback today. As we all know, neurofeedback is a powerful therapeutic tool, but still needs some scientific approval. From where we are right now, case studies are important for better approval and improvement of neurofeedback therapy. Also, case studies are easier to perform than those controlled, randomized, super big clinical trials, and you can perform them next to your therapeutic work. And because a lot of therapists are interested in reporting about their outcomes and their patients and what they did great, we decided to make this webinar to inform you all about case studies. Later on, we will also provide a template that you can use for future case studies if you want to make one, where all of the, as we consider, important content a case study should have is mentioned. You will receive this template and also the presentation we're clicking through right now with an email after the end of the seminar. So you may take notes, but you don't have to because you're getting this presentation as an email. As I already mentioned, whenever you're having a question, write it down in the chat, Horst, and I will answer it. And I'm having the honor to guide you through this presentation. I want you to know what I will talk about today. So I will briefly talk about what scientific work is at all. Then I will take a closer look at case studies, and I will introduce you to our template. Then I will talk specifically about data acquisition, because data is like the heart of every study, also of case studies. And I will show you two very quick and easy ways to get this data in your treatment process. This is QIK and symptom tracking. We will talk about that. Then we will talk about what to do when you finish your case study, where to publish it maybe. And afterwards, we're having some best practices for you and some tips you can follow. So, everybody good to go? Great. Scientific working, what is it? I want to start with an example / question. So what is meant by scientific working? When you're about to assess your therapeutic outcomes or your therapeutic success, how can you do that? You can first recognize in some way the patient is feeling better and rely on that. You can second know that you're a great therapist, you're always doing a good job, so the patient just has to be better off because you treated him. And the third option would be to look into the frequency and the changes in the symptoms of your patient, and you can infer improvement out of this. And as we all know intuitively, option C is most closely to a scientific approach. That means you're making the conclusion about your therapeutic success based on objectively comprehensive data related data related outcomes that other people can rely to, that are systematic and methodical procedured, and that are based on facts and evidence. So this would be the most closely way to a scientific approach, and I'm thinking most of you are already doing exactly this in your therapeutic work. To continue and to take it on another level, what is scientific work in medicine and psychology? It's really important for those because you have to collect empirical data to test hypotheses and theories. It's particularly important when we're talking about approving new drugs or medication, but also common therapeutic instruments like diagnostical manuals or tools or psychodiagnostic tests have been in those approving and have been in those state of collecting empirical data to be proved and to be used in therapy later on. Maybe some of you think, scientific work, that's only for universities, that's like nothing with practice to do. But that's not the case, as therapists also work empirically in practice because we do like observations, diagnostics, maybe our patients fill out questionnaires. And we make our decisions based on evidence. So we choose the therapy we're using or the method we're working with based on the evidence and data and the knowledge we have about it. So this is kind of an empirical and scientific approach too that we're doing in our everyday work and our everyday life. So all this research stuff is not only for universities, it's especially important when you're coming to practical work. I want to show you this. This is a chart about the different levels of evidence we have in medical research. As you can see, there are 7 different classes of evidence, and like, I don't want to fool you, case studies are at the very bottom of that list of evidence in medical research. They do not give as conclusive results as, for example, meta-analyses do. But they are easier to perform, they still give a lot of information about a specific case, and they can be ground building for future research to other levels of evidence. Like, no one is going to making a meta-analyze out of the blue. There has to be evidence from a lower level that is indicating for that. So case studies may not be the most researchable or the most scientific way, but they are still very important to climb up that ladder of evidence, and that's those levels of evidence, and to get all the data and the knowledge you need to have. So you're not doing just a case study, you're doing a case study, and that is great, and that is ground building, and that is also important in all that research progress. Talking about case studies, these are some examples for case studies. Does anybody of you recognize anyone on that photo? Everybody, anyone familiar with like any case of that? To be honest, they're very old. They're like Freud. Yeah, right. Freud is the old person here on the right. I'm getting some other answers. Anna, oh yeah, that's right. That's the person in the middle. That's also a Freud case. Phineas Gage, yeah, great. Okay, I see you guys are very up to date with case studies. So the not that nice looking man on the left, this is Phineas Gage. He had an accident with a metal pole that went straight through his forehead. He survived, but he had neurological and psychiatric deficits. And monitoring his damages, and his functions, doctors could relate functions to the associated brain areas. So this was really like an observative study where they could find out, okay, which part of the brain does what, or is assessed with what or related to what, and this is very interesting. The other two, as you guys already found out, are very old case studies. They were performed by Freud, and in psychoanalytics, case studies are still a go-to way of reporting because you get so much information about your patient because you just like talk and talk and talk with him, and you don't have other sources of evidence like tests or questionnaires or stuff like that. So psychoanalytics also today do a very lot of case studies or case descriptions, as they call them. Let me give you a quick definition of what a case study is. In a case study, data is collected to examine a current phenomenon that can be observed. In comparison to interventional or like clinical studies, case studies are usually not based on therapy, and they are not interventional. So you don't have anything like a control group or a non-treatment group or a placebo group. You don't have that. You're focusing on the one observative phenomenon that you're working with. And the goal is to collect interesting therapeutic aspects in order to derive future behavioral measures or tips. So you take a lot of information, data, and observation about the topic you're doing a case study for, and you gather it, you sort it, you write it down to better understand that phenomenon. Also, in a case study, you have the opportunities to really consider the characteristics of an individual patient. This is something you cannot do in a clinical study. In a clinical study, patients have to be like very, very similar. They, in the best case, shouldn't have any characteristics that like that they do not share with the others. So this is nothing like, you do not focus on an individual level. You can do that in case studies. Case studies are suitable for very complex questions that you cannot break down into just variables and correlations and stuff like that, but they're very complex and they're very mixed up and going together. This is when you can think about a case study. In a case study, you can also work with psychodiagnostic methods. You can also include the patient's history and biographical information. So this is the individual part I was talking about right before. In a case study, you just have the space to do that, and that makes case studies sometimes more interesting and more personal than those scientific works you usually read. Case studies in therapeutic practice. So what should go into a case study? What should be in a case study? What should you do before doing a case study? I talked about the patient information before, and that you can put in a lot of personal and individual information, but it's also important that you report the therapeutic procedure you performed. So in our example, that would be neurofeedback. And you have to describe the protocol you use, the position of the electrodes you choose, and all of that treatment protocol you went through. And also you have, of course, to report the outcomes of the therapy, so the changes in symptoms and behavior of the patient. Therefore, it is very recommended to do a continuous monitoring of the symptoms and their changes, because this is what your case study is basically based on and what you're working with. We also would like that you think about a pre-post comparisons, so that you're maybe doing measurements or tests at the very beginning, so before you even start the therapy, and after the patient finished his therapy, so that you have some high qualitative numbers that you can compare with one another. So when you're saying, I made a test for attention variables, and I'm seeing, wow, that gets much better after we completed the therapy, this is something you can also put in a case study that just gives more substance to it. We also want you to know that a lot of this data that you can use in a case study and that may be relevant or beneficial for it is already routinely collected in your therapeutic work. So in your practice or clinic, you ask the patient about a lot of his symptoms and how he feels during the therapy and how he evolves. So this is something you can put in a case study later on and that you can use. And that is not very much work to collect, because this is information you're already collecting. And also, I mentioned that before, you don't have to base your case study on theories. So you don't have to first read a lot of research papers and books. Then you don't have to figure out a hypothesis. You don't have to figure out all this stuff that you would do in an interventional study. So you can just report your case. Later on, you can discuss it, and you can do links to clinical literature and to other studies, but it's not the very substance. It's not the ground you're building in. The ground you're building your case study on is the patient, with all his information, all his personal being, and all his treatment process and outcomes. This is very, very good to know, looking at it from a very practical position. So the next question would be when to think about a case study, when should I do a case study, when could I perform a case study? And first of all, I want you to know that there are no strict guidelines or rules. So it's not wow, this case would never go into a case study. I would recommend you to think about what do I myself personally find interesting or unusual, and what would my colleagues like to read. So every time something like that occurs to your mind, it's an indicator for that maybe a case study would be interesting. So this could be when you're having patients with interesting outcomes of therapy, or with multiple or unusual comorbidities, or you have really to leave the standard treatment protocol and to do some more experimental work. Also, when you have patients you have a lot of information about, because you have various data sources you can work with. Maybe you could hand out the questionnaires to the parents or the teachers or stuff like that, so you know a lot about this patient. This also gives a lot of substance for your case study. Or if you have a patient with spontaneous remissions or unusual side effects, so if your patients are starting to talk Chinese after neurofeedback, that would be something interesting. Also, a lot of people think that a case study is indicated when you have several patients with similar symptoms or symptom clusters. But that is no longer a case study because you're not focusing on one individual, but many. So this would be like more a case series. That is also a way of scientific working, but not a way that we would like to focus on today. So you now heard when you can do a case study, but it's still like the question, how to do a case study. There are some ethical and formal requirements for case studies, of course, because it's like working with human beings, and there always has to be some ethical base and ground line to go away with it. So the first one would be to inform the patient about the course, aim, and content of the study, even if it's just a case study. But the patient has to be informed, and he or she also has the right to withdraw his or her consent at any time of the therapy. Then, especially in the European Union, we have to think a lot about data protection when like collecting the data and also when storing the data. So this is something you should maybe take into consideration before doing a case study. Also, as therapists, we all underlie the medical confidentially. And very much, a lot of professional associations from like doctors or therapists or psychologists have their own guidelines and principles when it comes to research with human beings. So the most known one would be the APA, the American Psychological Association. They have a lot of guidelines regarding studies and research. I linked them in the presentation so that you just redirect it to their page and you can read more about it. And also the British Psychological Society has their own guidelines for medical research. You can search in your country or in your profession for similar associations and guidelines, and I'm very sure you will find some. Please note that there are special requirements when you're working with children or minors, and keep that in mind because you also have like to inform the parents and to get their consent and all of that. And I want you to know that maybe some of the necessary ethical and formal aspects already could be covered when you adjust your treatment contract. A lot of us have treatment contracts in their practice or clinic. So if you just take some paragraphs into that, you can be good prepared and get good prepared for a case study later on. Yeah, there are some other requirements, especially for the publication of case studies. So when you are planning to publish your case study later on, especially in a high-class journal, like we're talking Science here, you need to prove some other ethical and formal requirements. For example, a lot of times you have to assure that your work is compliant with the Declaration of Helsinki. This is a very long existing declaration for working with humans and studies, and it's very like basic little, but still very important. So take a closer look at that and reassure that you're working in compliance with it. There are also some optional requirements that we like do not see for a case study, but maybe if you're planning a clinical study or a trial, they're getting relevant. And we want to inform about those regulatory processes and requirements. So when you're performing a trial, we would suggest to register your trial in a register for clinical studies. For example, in Germany, we have the DRKS, which is the German Register of Clinical Studies. It's a service from the Ministry of Health, and you can find all ongoing and also finished clinical studies regarding any medical indication in there. So it's also a very strong database for research. If you're interested in a specific topic, you can take a closer look at that database. And it increases the chances of publications because a lot of journals require those trials and studies to be registered in such a register for clinical studies. Also, you should be aware that you maybe need the vote of an ethics committee. Like that's not the case for case studies in like most of cases. Wow, that was very much case in one sentence. But yeah, when it comes to studies and trials, you need those ethical votes to publish your work and even to like continue your work. Ethics committees can be found at universities, and also there are regional ethics committees maybe based in your city or like governmental or public institutions. As I mentioned, they're necessary for publication in high-level journals, and from our opinion, they're not that relevant when just performing a case study. So that would be the requirements from an ethical and formal view. Now I want to talk about what has to go into a case study and how is a case study structured. So in most of the cases, you just start with the title of the study at first, then you name the author, then you can, but not in every, you can write an abstract, and you can link special keywords to your study. We would suggest that you start with an introduction with the background of the case, and that you maybe present the relevant clinical literature on methods and indications. This is nothing you have to present, but it just gives more substance to your paper. But as I said, case studies do not have been to be based on theory or on literature, so this is optional. Then you should deliver a lot of patient information and all the clinical findings. And you should present the treatment procedure in the process of the time. Also, you have to mention outcomes and follow up. This is very important for your case study. And later on, you can discuss them. And the very nice thing you can do in a case study is actually put in a patient statement. So a statement from the view of the patient, how he or she get along with the therapy, how he or she feels right now. And this is something very nice to know. This like gives a very subjective and a very personal information you cannot collect in other types of research works. As I promised, we have a template for those case studies. These are basically screenshots of the template that you will get later on via email. And they just cover all of the important topics I talked about before. So this is structured similar to what I showed you on the page before. You just start with title, author, abstract, keywords, introduction, background of the case, patient information, clinical findings. It would be very nice to know if you had some like fMRI outcomes or stuff like that. You can also put that into, and like some physiological data. Then you describe the treatment process. You relate to the treatment protocol. You mention the electrode position. You mention how many sessions you had with the patient and which time intervals and all of that. And then you describe the therapeutic outcomes. So how have the symptoms changed? How does the patient feel now? What can be observed as an outcome? And you may close with a discussion. So maybe if you had, just to discuss what comes to your mind, what you found interesting, what you found unusual, or what is specific to the patients and to this treatment process. And then you may close with the patient statement. As we mentioned, a very personal and nice touch for case studies. So that would be the template you're getting later on, and that you can like just fill out to get a first structure of your case study, and also that gives you like an impression of what specific information you may need to perform a case study. Now I want to take a closer look onto data collection, because data collection is like really the core of the case study. So data is the core of every scientific or medical work. And I want you to introduce to two very easy ways to get this data, which would be symptom tracking and QIK. They're useful additional tools for data collection in your therapeutic work and also for case studies. Let's start with what data in general can go into a case study. Case studies work with various data from different sources. They could be quantitative, so numerical, or qualitative, so just like a report. non-numerical data. So you can perform specific diagnostic tests, like you can do an QIK-Test, you can do like indication-related testing. You can, if you're like interested in attention, you can also do the TOVA, so the test of variables of attention, or just like other psychodiagnostic test manuals that you also use. You can perform diagnostic interviews, you can hand out questionnaires about personality, you can let the patient do a self-assessment so that the patient comments on his symptoms, or you can take external assessments into consideration, so hand out questionnaires to parents or teachers or something to rate the symptoms of the patient. Then, of course, your observation and clinical impression can go in as a data source. You can also, and this is very interesting, take artifacts and behavior correlates into a closer look. So that would be like school grades and how they develop during the time of the neurofeedback therapy. And also you can put in autobiographical information. So maybe if your patient is writing a diary or anything similar, or like very artistic and having photos or drawings or something like that, you can check this information and you can see if you can use it in a case study. And this is what makes case studies really interesting. So you're having a lot of data from a lot of different sources that you can combine to describe and understand this phenomenon, this patient. That's great. Yeah, let's take a closer look to what I mentioned before, the QIK. The QIK continuous performance test, or just shortened CPT, is the computerized visual continuous performance test that is developed for assessing attention and impulse control. It is specified for the use by neurofeedback clinicians, so it's very like shaped to neurofeedback, for the assessment and monitoring of the effects of the therapy. It is a standardized test procedure. It's suitable for all users from 5 up to 100 years. And the execution time of the test is 21 minutes, and you have to stick to that. You get a comprehensive report in relation to the norm group, which is standardized. The test is divided into 5 phases, where the frequency and the intervals of those go-no-go tasks the patient has to react or not react to change. So you can assess attention under high and low loads. As you can see, it's a separate test device. You see that in the picture on the right. And the simple visual target or non-target is presented once every 2 seconds. And the subject must press the button, you see those black buttons on the device, to respond to each target. And they're not supposed to press when there is no target. What we see here is a go condition. So all fields except the middle light up. This would be the indication for, yeah, I have to press the button. This is my go task. And no-go would be all fields, including the one in the middle, light up. To get a better impression of the QIK, we also have a video about this. Horst, may you play our video? In this video, we show you how the QIK test works in usage. Okay, you all see that? So this is the countdown before the test starts. That was a no-go. That also. Having a go condition, and the subject is pressing the button. This is also a go condition. And this, as you can assume, is a low load phase, so it's not very stressful. Then we have the time lapse of the 21 minutes. And there are phases where it's more stressful because more go conditions appear in shorter time. And there are phases that are just like a bit more chill, like the ones we saw in the very beginning. The subject is performing this for 21 minutes. Then the test gives an auditive signal that it's complete. So let's go back to our presentation. Okay. I hope you got a better impression of the QIK-Test by this video. I will continue with, great. Now I'm seeing my charts again.
I just want to point out that in the middle part of this video, that was a time lapse. So the real time was much slower. So there is an interval of 1 second between the individual presentations of the task, and that never changed during the whole test.
Yeah, thank you for clarifying that. This is a table that shows you which variables are measured in the QIK and how they are related to the outcomes. So we would recommend to focus on the green highlighted variables. You can also use the white ones, but we don't assume them to be as much informative as the green ones. So what goes into the report is the average response time. So how much time does it take my subject to react to the Go tasks correctively, so in the right way. And this is a hint for processing and response time. Then we take into a closer look the variability of response time. So how much variability is in the time that the subject takes to repeat, to answer correctly to Go tasks. And this shows a variability of performance. Then we have omission errors. That means omitting Go tasks. That means not pressing when you are supposed to press. And this is a sign for inattention. And we have commission errors. So this is pressing to a no-go task, a false reaction to a no-go task. And this is a sign for impulsivity, for like less impulse control. So you will get a test report afterwards, and the test report is like really focusing on these 4 variables to give you a better understanding of different attention outcome measurements of your patient. So take another closer look to QIK. To carry out the QIK, so to perform a QIK test, you need the test device. That is what you see on the photo on the left. You need the software. This is in the middle. And you need access to QIK-Expert, where you can do the reporting and the comparison to database. So this is where the standard norm also has the database. These are required. The device you see on the left is connected to the computer you use via USB to prepare a test. So you download the test on the device. Your patient is performing the test, and afterwards you all once again connect the device to the PC, and the results are saved in the software, and the report is generated out of the database. One of you may ask, why do I need a separate device? This actually has an advantage to it, because the separate device is measuring the reaction speed more precisely, since there is no time delay due to computer drivers. So you can get more accurate answers to the reaction time. Also, it's ergonomically shaped, which is really nice to perform the test. So when you download the software on the test device before the start of the test, it's required to establish a connection between the test device and computer, but that can be done through USB. And the software also ensures that the test can be saved on the computer after the test is completed. Each patient receives his or her own test ID, and you can do multiple tests with the one ID. So you can do the QIK test in different times. So you can do it before therapy, and then like after you reach the middle of the sessions you planned, and then once again after completing all of your therapeutic sessions. the QIK-Expert database supports therapeutic work, and the test evaluation and the test report are done on this platform you see on the right. You just select the patient by the test ID. You specify gender and age of your patient. This is important for the norm sample and standardization. You upload the test data into those database, and you receive the test report. And this is what we will take a closer look at right now, the test report. The test report gives out a performance index. So this is where all the response time and the variability of response time go in, and an accuracy index. So this is where omission and commission mistakes are calculated together. Results are presented as standard values, like you already know from maybe IQ tests. And so you can compare them. Also inter-individual. Those standard values, they are from a norm group of more than 2,000 participants from 2014, which is like really new. If you take a closer look on other tests for variables of attentions, they are not that new regarding the norm group. And we know that specific variables of attention do change with time, so it's really necessary to update your norm group evaluation standardization. Also, you can get all of your important outcomes with just one look, because standard values that are significantly below the median are shown in red, and standard values that are significantly above the median are shown in green. That means you can, by one look, identify how your patient is behaving, or how his attention is in regard to comparison with his norm group by age and gender. I will show you how those test reports will look like when you receive it. On the left side, we see the performance index. It reflects speed and consistency of response. And on the right side, we see the accuracy index. It reports sustained attention and impulse control, and it's involving the different errors the subject made, so commission and omission errors. As we can see in this report, both of the indices are in a normal range compared to age and gender of the subject. This is a female subject aged 18 years. The indices are given in standard scores, as I already said, and the limited range is from 55 to 145, and the results are with reference to the 2014 population-based QIK norm. Also, as these are standard scores, you see one green highlighted score, and that would be a score that is significantly above the average. These are reported in green. If a score is significantly below the average, it would be reported in red, but this is not the case here. Then let's move on. So this would be a very good first impression of how your subject performed in the test. You have these two indexes. You have the omission errors and the commission errors, so the errors your subject made when pressing or not pressing when a go task was shown, the response time, the variability. These are very accurate informations you can use to judge on the attention of the patient. Then you have more detailed. Oh yeah, no, I wanted to talk about the lower table just very shortly. It shows the results more specifically. So omission errors occur when the subject does not respond correctly to a target, so non-pressing when it's a go task actually. Outliers are a correct response to a go task, but with a very long response time that is a lot longer than usual, and therefore it is reported separately as an outlier. Commission errors occur when the subject responds incorrectly to a non-target, so pressing when it's actually a no-go task. And response time is the mean time it took the subject to respond correctly to go task. And variability is the standard deviation of those of this correct response time. So a lot of information pressed into one table, but don't worry, the system also gives you out like a report on that. So you can just take a look at those two indexes, and then you can read through your report, and you get all of the important information without having to look at the data too close. And yeah, once again, in this example, we are looking on an average, or maybe slightly above average, attention performance regarding to age and gender norm. Here you see a breaking up of the numbers into the 5 periods the test has. This is a more detailed look at the standard scores. You can compare how your patient performs in phases of high and low load, so in very stressful phases and in less stressful phases, and how he or she handles the switches between those phases. This is what is highlighted in blue here. This is very nice additional information for you. And in this example, we see a slightly higher standard score in commission errors in the high load section. So that would be the middle of the blue lighted section columns. But we can also agree that the changes are not high in between the phases, so they are very, very similar. So we would say attention is like suitable and sustainable through all of the phases. You may take a closer look on the data, but you don't have to, because the test report also includes a written interpretation of the results, which summarizes them, highlights the most important results. But if you're really interested in taking a closer look at the data, the test report gives you the opportunity to do. You can also, this is interesting when you're reporting multiple quick tests in like different times. So maybe like before beginning of therapy, in the middle of all those therapy sessions, and after the end of the therapy. And this is exactly what we see here. We see a pre-post comparison of 3 different quick tests performed to different times. And the report gives out a very nice visualization of those. And in this example, we can see a complete reduction of the emission errors. They're highlighted in green, and yes, you can see the last point does not even have 1 omission error. So this indicates an improvement of inattention. Also, we can see a reduction of the commission errors. Commission errors are the red sections here, and we see that it gets smaller and smaller with every time, which indicates a reduction in impulsivity. And taken together, these 2 error reportings just show us an improvement of the accuracy index. So this is what you can look at when you're doing multiple quick tests in different times. To summarize the quick test very quickly, that's nice. The QIK is an assessment instrument for evaluating attention parameters. It goes really well with neurofeedback therapy because it focuses on the attention variables that also can improve through neurofeedback. And it provides more information and indices than other assessments do, like maybe the D2. This does not have that many variables of attention. It can be performed several times during therapy. It enriches your data for case studies because it's very quantitative data. It's data that carries a lot of information that you can use in a case study. And the test report is very comprehensive. So you can take a lot of information out of that, but also central results, and the main results can be seen immediately. You have to consider that you need a separate device for that test. But as I told you before, this has like more benefits than risks to it. And you have to obey the execution time of 21 minutes. And that can be challenging for some patients, as we know from our clinical expertise. But yeah, you just could give it a go and could try it. And we would say it gives a lot of very good data you can also use in a case study. And it's a quick and effective way to monitor changes in attention in your patients. Yeah. So just take a quick pause to look at the questions. Horst, are you still handling them great? Can you give me a sign? Handling all the questions? Any ones we should answer in public?
Not at this time.
Not this time. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm getting the comment that 21 minutes is a really long time. I agree with it, but you also get very good data out of it. So the data is very informative, and you don't get that much data when you perform tests that are not that time consuming, like the D2. Or other tests of attention, like the TOVA, are also long in their execution. So yeah, this is like, you have to weigh out the pros and cons and then decide whether you want to make it quick or you prefer another source of attention testing. That's totally fine. So the next thing I would like to introduce you is symptom tracking. Symptom tracking is great for an ongoing symptom assessment during the therapy. Symptom tracking is an online tool that tracks the patient development of the symptoms. And it's an instrument for recording the changes during neurofeedback therapy. It has it's a structured individual clinical evaluation, and it includes up to 180 symptoms from 8 different symptom categories like pain, sleep, attention, and all of this. And the patient rates the symptoms on a scale from 0 to 10 at fixed intervals. And the big advantage in here is that the patient can do this rating of symptoms from home with a reminder function, because this is like a software-based online tool that he can access from wherever he or she is. And by doing so, by like really getting those symptom ratings into a software and into a digital way, you prevent transmission errors and questionnaire loss. And as we all know, questionnaires are getting lost. If you had just handled them out paper pencil and asked the patient to fill them out at home, you like never receive them. So this is a very good way to make sure that you're getting the reports on the symptoms in very fixed intervals, and you can really rely on that information. Also, the online tool is giving you out a report with a 3D diagram that shows you how the symptoms developed through time. So these are the symptom categories you can use or that are covered by the online tool. As you can see, these are the main affective and physiological categories we need in therapeutic work. And we would like to recommend you that you don't make your patient fill out all the 180 symptoms from 8 categories all the times. We would recommend you that you take a close look at what symptoms your patient have and what are the most burdening ones, and that you just make a list out of 20 to 25 items that the patient is rating ever and ever and ever. So yeah, you just focus on the main symptoms and you monitor them very strictly. And then you can get a lot of more data and information out of them as rating the whole scale of all the symptoms once and once again. This is a look at the online tool. It's also, by the way, the symptom tracking also is hosted by EEG Expert. So this is the software I was talking about when we also talked about the QIK. And you can select the patient's symptoms individually. This is what I recommended you, and that you just focus on like 20 to 25 items. And you can evaluate them in person with your patient before each neurofeedback session, for example. So when the patient comes in and you're like putting on the electrodes, and then you're asking, hey, how did your sleep or your attention or whatever evoke through the week? And then the patient rates from a scale from 0, so the symptom was not available or did not occur, to 10, it was extremely strong, did occur very often, and was very like burdening. During your therapy, you may include additional symptoms. So when you see like, okay, we're done with that attention at all, but sleep is now a problem, you just include symptoms from the sleep category and let them be monitorized. And this monitorization can also be done from home by remote. This is a very nice way. The patient can do it in very fixed intervals. You can, like every 2 days or even on a daily basis, these symptoms could get categorized. Also, in that same software, you as a therapist can take down notes. You maybe see that in the very bottom of the photo. So you can write down the training protocol you used, you can write down the location of the electrodes you used in that session, so that you can really link symptom changes to those changes in protocol and electrode position you did. And this is very nice for you because it's really nice to track all important information at once, and you never ever again lose your notes or forget like important details or lose questionnaires or stuff like that. And you have all that relevant information at one look in one software with a remote access for your patient. And this is something very nice and something you should really consider especially when it comes to case studies, because case studies live from that evaluation and those monitoring of the symptoms and their changes. And this can be done very easily by using symptom tracking. You can also use symptom tracking in a paper pencil way, but as I already said, the danger of getting questionnaire loss or like any other failures happening is much higher as when you're already having it in a digital way, in a digital software. So this would be one diagram that shows how the symptoms decreased during a neurofeedback therapy, actually. So this is the development of symptoms graphically over time. You see different time periods of neurofeedback sessions here, and we can see a decrease in all of the listed symptoms, so the symptoms that were relevant for the patient. And we also see that some symptoms decreased more than other, and this is a nice way to show progress even to your patient. Yeah, you can visualize the progress he or she made by handling out this diagram. This is just another one. Here are more. We have more time peaks here. We also have more symptoms here, and this is just like based on what you're picking out in the software, how this looks, but it's also very nice graphical and visualization to show to your patients, to have for yourself, to see what your work really does to the symptoms that are burdening for your patient. Yeah, so this would be how the tracking report can look like when using symptom tracking. A quick wrap-up summary of symptom tracking. So symptom tracking is a digital tool with an integrated interface for clinical use and observation. You don't have to do any manual transfer of symptom ratings, and you don't have a lot of questionnaires. It's a very big symptom list, 180 symptoms out of 8 categories. That means you should find the right symptoms that you need for your patient. Also, individual symptoms can be selected for patients. That means no boredom by answering inapplicable symptoms. Freely definable frequency of execution, including remote from the patient's home. It's more economical than repeating clinical interviews to get all the information you need. The graphic report is also really great to focus on that symptom change, and it's absolutely recommendable for case studies because you just monitor the data you need very close-knit, and it's a very easy way to measure meaningful symptoms and their changes over time. Are there any questions regarding the symptom tracking?
Yeah, maybe I can interrupt you here at this point. There was a question where to get a form about these, or with the symptoms, and yeah, what I can tell you is that we can send you such a form as an attachment via email. So this kind of forms we are usually giving or are part of our neurofeedback courses. So those of you who already have participated such a basic neurofeedback course from us, they should have this form, and all others can get it via email.
Yeah, so our contact will be listed at the very end of the presentation, and if you're getting the presentation, you can always contact us with with any questions and regards you have. I also wanted to say that, Horst, please correct me if I'm like false, but when you're using the QIK-Test, you also have access to the symptom tracking, and by accessing the symptom tracking software, you can see a list of all the symptoms. Is that right? I think so, right?
Yes, that is right. So when you are at the website of EEG-Expert and you have logged into your account, you can either or you can do quick testing and to get a report about the quick test, and and in parallel, you can also go for the symptom tracking. So this is both available at the website of EG Expert.
So some of our users are writing that they have like different categories or different symptom lists when they attended the course. I think we sometimes update that list actually.
Yes, that's true. That's true. So those of you who have done the course a couple of years ago, there is at the moment, or is an updated version now.
Yeah. Yeah. So
I think it's 2 years old or so, the update.
Yeah, right. So yeah, it's like everything in psychology or medicine, you do have updates and you do have more knowledge, and then we just put it into the symptom list, and that may be the reason why yours isn't that up to date, but it's like still useful, right? But if you want to use the newest version of it or the most accurate user version, then you can register for QIK and you get access to the symptom track, and you can download the form there. I don't see any other questions incoming. Should I just move on with case studies? Right? Okay, I'm moving on. So now we talked a lot about data and data collection and case studies. Let's talk about use and benefits of case studies. So what to do with the case study when I actually wrote the case study. So case studies, of course, can be published in journals. Therefore, we would like you to know that an ethical vote and maybe a registration could be required. So inform yourself by the journal you want to handle in your paper or your case study, and they will let you know what they need. Then also you can present your paper at congresses and conferences to let all your colleagues know what great work you did. Case studies are great for the usage in databases, and they can be very great for when you're doing your research and you need a lot of literature, and yeah, you're very happy to find case studies that regard to the indication you're working with. So yeah, take them into databases and yeah, let them be freely accessible for the research community. They can later on be used in meta-analysis. I would not recommend you to do a meta-analysis on your own. Let the statistic do that. But it's great if it can go in there as an information and its substance. Also, you can generate white papers out of case studies. White papers are not that research specific. They are more used to inform the public about new phenomena or new developments in the scientific world. And also case studies can serve as an inspiration for other therapists, for researchers, for the whole community to take a closer look at specific indications or specific treatment protocols or specific treatment methods, like we're hoping it will get on with neurofeedback in that way. Then I would like to give you some tips and best practice when dealing with case studies. So first of all, keep in mind, information is everything. Try to collect as much information as possible from various data sources. Try to go innovative ways, try to include innovative data, but collect as much knowledge as you can. Also, case studies are simpler than expected. A lot of the data already exists, you already collected it in your practice or in your clinic, and case studies therefore are low threshold entry into scientific work. So they're not as complex or as hard to perform as real studies, as clinical studies. They're easier, but they still deliver a lot of very important information. When performing a case study, please focus on science instead of intuition. So using a tool to quantify the course of therapy, the therapy outcome, scientifically improves the results and the scientific weight of your case study. Also, we recommend to not do too much of a good thing. Don't try too many therapies, treatment approaches, whatever, because this is a case study. Just don't do that. Otherwise, the effects of individual therapies and individual treatments can no longer be understood and be reflected in the symptom changes your patient has. Also, we want to seek for reality instead of perfection. So perfection is what you can find in every book. Reality is what happens in real therapy and in practice. So case studies should reflect real and complex cases, and even if a therapy attempt does fail or does not lead to success, take that into your case study. Even if you have side effects, take that in, discuss that, but just give the real impression of the treatment you performed. Also, we want to remind you that it's very helpful to collect data systematically. So to use QIK and symptom tracking, for example, to collect and use meaningful data in a very effective and also easy to handle way. This is what we would like to keep you in mind when it comes to case studies, and this is also the take-home message we're having for you. These 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 steps are a very good base for starting a case study, for performing a case study. And if there are any other questions or regards, or you're like, you don't know how to handle a case study, we are here for you right now. Please ask us every question you want to ask. If you're having points for a discussion or a professional exchange, let us know right now in the comment section, and we will react to this.
There was a question from my very best friend from Iran. And the question is, yes, we are very international here. Is it common to get EEG, ERP data before and after neurofeedback session in case studies? And the answer to that question is it's not common. So you can do case studies just doing neurofeedback, for instance, as a therapy, and to have maybe a quick test and symptom tracking to gather additional data than from the therapy alone. To include also EEG and ERP is a demanding goal, and I mean it would be very nice to have that. The more data you have, the better, but it's not common.
Yeah, so we would be very excited if you did so, and if you would consider this data when you're able to collect it and when you have the data. It would be great to put this in, because these are physiological data that also has to be case studies. So yeah, please do so if you have the opportunity to. In the email you will get later on, we will have an example of a case study that was actually published by one of our colleagues. And I guess she had ERP, if not even fMRI data. So you can do that. Absolutely. So I also got a question regarding TOVA. So TOVA is another way for testing variables of attention. It's also a psychodiagnostic measurement of them, also computerized. I will send you a link if that would be okay. Just scrolling through your questions and seeing if there are any questions we should answer for all of you once again. So if you're interested in purchasing the QIK or symptom tracking, at the very last part of our presentation, we also have the most important links where you can get more information, where you can register for QIK and symptom tracking and use it later on. Oh yeah, this is a great question. So we're getting a question for which disorders QIK is usable. And actually, QIK is usable for all of the disorders. So there are no-go indications. And you can use QIK in assessment with patients that do have any indications of mental health.
Of course, the QIK-Test also symptom tracking, especially the QIK-Test, gives you some answer about inattention or attention, concentration, reaction times, all these parameters. So of course, when the pathology of your patient does not belong or touch these areas, then the QIK-Test might not be the best choice for as a test.
Yeah, especially when it comes to the errors, because the errors are for impulsivity and inattention, and this is something that is related to ADHD in a specific way. So when you're having a patient with ADHD, we absolutely can recommend to use QIK. When you're having a patient with another disorder, then you can look more at the first index I presented. I'll just go back very quickly, then you can follow me. So I would focus on the performance index, because this is like speed and consistency of response, and that could be also delayed by other disorders and psychopathologies like, I don't know, like personality disorders. They also have some malfunctions in that. But the whole test, as it is contemplated, is very good, even if working with children and especially with ADHD. But you can even use it, and that was the question before, when you're having a patient with epilepsy or migraine. This does not, from our knowledge, trigger any of those. So just, you may use it with every disorder. Yeah, so we're getting the comment that the QIK-Test may be more usable for other disorders if specific questions related to disorders are included. I just want to remind you that we're testing attention, and attention is not specifically disorder related. So this is a test for attention, and you can do it independent from the disorder that your patient has. It's like testing EQ. EQ is also not related to disorders. It's another variable. But of course, you can extend the data by including disorder-specific questionnaires. That would be great, of course. This is another data source. Would really appreciate if you're doing this. Okay. So did all of your questions got answered? If yes, please let me know via smiley or thumbs up. Otherwise, I will still hang in here because I have nothing to do on Friday night. I actually don't.
You're such a good liar. I didn't know before.
Yeah, due to lockdown corona, I limited my personal contacts as I was supposed to. So I'm getting thumbs up a lot. I'll just let you once again have a look at this page where our contact is listed. Remember, you're getting this presentation, so you don't have to write down our email address. You will receive this in just a few hours. So if you're having any more questions regards, you don't know how to start a case study, but you would love to, or you have any other scientific interests, please let us know. So via this email, you're reaching the scientific team of BMedic. This would be Horst and I. And we also have some other colleagues joining us in our department. And we're really looking forward to working with you to make neurofeedback even better scientific based, and to collect more and more evidence for this beautiful way of therapy for mental disorders. I think I summed that up really great. Oh, is it possible to get some support? Yeah.
So there's some
Yeah,
questions or comments coming in.
Yeah.
Some people still.
The guys are still really up to. So access to ResearchGate. Not really, but you can easily create a profile yourself. If you're interested in specific literature regarding neurofeedback, we at the scientific department at BMedic have a huge database we built in the last years, about I would say nearly all of the papers that got published, specifically when it comes to ILF neurofeedback. So if you're interested in neurofeedback specific papers, let us know via email and we could maybe send you them via PDF because they're in our database. I'm not sure whether I'm getting this question. Horst, are you? Database of QIK is always, the database of QIK always getting larger.
I think so, yes. The guy that runs EEG Expert, he's still collecting data. So the number of 20,000 Jennifer mentioned earlier in her presentation definitely will increase with time.
Yeah, definitely. And also Marco, you mentioned his name already. He's very aware of keeping the standardization and the norm up to date. So yeah, we're working really closely with him on that. And with every quick test we're taking, the database is increasing. So completely yes. Oh, we're getting asked about plans for future webinars. Yeah, so guys, if you want future webinars, in this email you will receive, there will be a survey where exactly these questions will be asked to you. So are you interested in more webinars? And you have to click yes, 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 yes to see more of us. Yeah, and then we can talk about other stuff. Like, I don't know, EEG, ERP, QEEG. Oh, I have so much knowledge to spread, I guess, actually. Do we know how many quick tests we already got? So officially communicated, we got 20,000. This is what the norm is based on, but I think the number is much higher. Yes. Okay. So we're getting a question if any research has been completed on prisoners. That is very specific. Oh, what are you planning for? Actually, there was. We had an inmate project in Spain, right? Do we have a paper on that? I think we have one. Horst, do we have one?
Research neurofeedback on
prisoners.
Prisoners.
We had that project in Spain where they also were about intoxication and drug abuse and inmates. Yeah, we have them. Just write us an email down. Harris, we're totally up to you. So as we are nearly reaching our time limit, and you guys may have plans for tonight, as we don't have, we're super fine when you just decide to leave us right now. We would like to thank you very much for your attention. We will keep in here some more minutes to answer the very last of your questions. Look out for that email you will receive from us with all the information that we delivered today. Feel free to contact us if there are any questions or regards, and just keep in touch with us. Thank you so much for joining us today. Horst, some final words from you.
I'm still reading. Some people still writing.
Yeah.
There is some more information. So
I'm just keep waiting.
So most same. Okay. Yeah. Thank you
just
also
fishing for compliments, right?
A lot. They're writing goodbye and good wishes. So it was great to have you all in this webinar here.
Thank you very much for attending.
Dear greetings.
Bye.